All those who are holding tickets outside will get in as fast as they can. I'm speaking not to you, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm speaking to the crowd on the outside, who seem to be standing rather reluctant to come in, and we're going to start this very soon.
Welcome back to Worthy. My name is John.
And I'm Ben.
And today we're jumping in with an early bird special, an early Oscar prediction episode where Ben and I are going to break down some kind of early guesses, predictions, a little bit of the main four categories or 4, 5, 6 categories that we're going to hit on today. But before we jump in to the early Oscar predictions of the 95th Oscars, I wanted to talk a little bit about the holiday season and more specifically Thanksgiving. It's the week of Thanksgiving when we're recording this and when we're going to publish it. So I wanted to mention we like doing these little holiday episodes, and I wanted to talk about why people really don't make films about Thanksgiving. Or maybe if we have a film about Thanksgiving, I think the automatic film that people go to is Trains, Planes, and Automobiles, because the title of that film could be like I'll Be Home for Thanksgiving. That could be the real title for Trains, Planes, and Automobile, because it is about Steve Martin's journey to getting home and to being home for Thanksgiving and the holidays. And people usually look at that film as being the one and only Thanksgiving film. I know there are other films I've seen, and we were looking up before the show here to kind of like look into films that really celebrate Thanksgiving. But it really comes down to a lot of films that just mention Thanksgiving, or there's a scene in Thanksgiving, a memorable moment that shows Thanksgiving in a film. Of course, you have the short film like A Charlie Brown Thanksgiving. That's a classic that my family watches every year. But Ben, I wanted to first ask you, why do you think we have so many Christmas films, and we have all sorts of different holiday films that celebrate different religions and different aspects of the holidays, but I feel like we rarely center on Thanksgiving, and there's not many films that are built around the holiday of Thanksgiving, and I'm curious, what do you think and why do you think that is?
I think that because it's very similar in the sense of like what it means to be celebrating it. Like a Christmas, I think automatically pulls out like, oh, I'm thankful to be around family. It's a family time. And why it's probably not as popular, and I think mainly because it's just an American holiday, So if like the movie, to make a Thanksgiving movie, I think it would only be like well received in America if it was done well. I don't know how well received it. I mean, I think maybe that's why Christmas is, because that's a global holiday. Sure. That's what jumps out to mind a little bit. I also think that aesthetically, Christmas movies and holiday movies have the snow, you have the lights, but what does what does a Thanksgiving have? It's gray out. There's dying leaves on the ground. It sometimes can be very wet. I can see why, like, from just a marketing visual perspective, it's not the best holiday to have, but it actually I think would be like fun to see and explore. I think that there is a lot there you can do. I think there's a lot of obvious family drama. I think it breeds like really cool like sports and like football stuff. I always would play football with friends during Thanksgiving breaks, in college. We would come back together, watch football, on the day. So I think that there is an opportunity there, but I think that from a marketing and business perspective, it's not necessarily the best one to use, which is kind of surprising when you think about it.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned the weather, because it's so true. And I've been thinking about that this week because I'm preparing for Thanksgiving and getting things ready, and a lot of the decorations are so holiday themed, and it's all about like the oranges, the yellows, and the reds of fall. But you're so right. It's at this time of year, and usually this third to last week of Thanksgiving, or November, I should say, it is gray out and it's damp usually. It sometimes can rain a lot because it's not cold enough yet for snow. And it's funny that we always associate Thanksgiving with those colors, but it's really, most of the trees are bare. Especially growing up in the Northeast like we did, it's just usually bare by that point, and the leaves are on the ground. They're dead, they're dying, they're decaying. There's a smell to the leaves kind of like decaying over time, but there's a funny aspect of that, like maybe that's what needs to be hit on. Or like you mentioned, maybe it's football. That's like a good way of kind of like examining the holidays, or examining Thanksgiving in particular. It's always been fascinating to me with athletes that they have to always play over the holidays, because especially Thanksgiving is such a big day for football. And that is an interesting film on its own, like the conflict between an athlete trying to have to go and play a sport when he should be at home with his family during a very like specific time to hang out with his family. So that's just an idea that you sparked in my head from you saying.
But doesn't that, to build on this idea, doesn't that get to the core of what Thanksgiving is? Because in reality, those players who do play on Thanksgiving, or really any holidays, like their family plans around it. Yeah, maybe it's not ideal. Maybe it can be rushed. Maybe they're not exactly where they want to be or even with them at all. But I guess if you're still having that spirit, this feels like a TV movie that we could just make right now. Just like have that spirit. We'll have Thanksgiving on Black Friday type of thing, or the night before. But what matters is we're all together and being thankful for each other. We don't need a specific day to do that.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's an interesting aspect of it too. It is like that becomes probably like a one common thing for families that are, families of athletes, where they can kind of come together and they root for a kid. Maybe they aren't like talking about politics anymore because they're rooting on their, son or daughter for whatever sport that they're doing. And I was trying to like look in to see if there was anything else that I could find in terms of films that are kind of based around Thanksgiving. And I guess Guess Who's Coming to Dinner is considered a Thanksgiving film as well, which is an interesting take on a Thanksgiving film where you kind of switch up. You really switch the board on the parents by introducing someone who they didn't really expect to come to dinner. So that's a funny aspect of it. There's a film that I love called The Big Night, or I think it's just Big Night, with Stanley Tucci and Tony Shalhoub. And that is one of my favorite films about like cooking. So it's a lot about cooking, which I think is a huge staple of Thanksgiving, and that is also kind of a way to kind of break in and explore Thanksgiving. I mean, it's so much about food. So it's either like we discuss the animal itself with a turkey and we kind of break down a film, and it's usually animated films. There's a film called like Free Bird, and I think people even look at films like Chicken Run as almost being a Thanksgiving film because it's all about birds and chickens and turkeys and there's a lot of humor in it. It's a very weird thing that we do, and I think you're right with it being Americans. It's like kind of so like specific to us as a group of people that like celebrate this thing that most people just don't understand. And in fact, it's something that like most Americans don't even understand the history of how it started and where it's kind of ended up and why we still celebrate it till today. But in all that saying, I'm thankful for film, and I'm thankful for the year of 2022 and all the great movies that we have and that we're getting this year. So, Ben, is there any final hits, anything you want to talk about Thanksgiving and Thanksgiving cinema?
Yeah, I would be remiss if I did not bring up this was never made, unfortunately, or at least wasn't made into a feature film. But the Eli Roth little short trailer for Thanksgiving in Quentin Tarantino's Planet Terror or Grindhouse? Grindhouse Planet.
Yeah.
They had a little trailer for this movie called Thanksgiving. And when I saw that trailer, I was like, man, that would actually be a really good horror movie taking place over Thanksgiving. So, maybe I think they had a jack-o'-lantern, but even just like, it was a really cool idea. And I thought it was going to be into a movie, and supposedly they were trying to make it into a movie, but they didn't. But they did hobo with a shotgun out of all those trailers, those fake trailers.
Yeah,
but the Thanksgiving trailer looked like the best one.
It definitely did. Yeah, I love that. I wish we got more fake trailers like that. But no, you're absolutely right. I mean, I forget what it is. I think it was called Pilgrim that I saw. That was like a horror movie about, I think, pilgrims coming back and attacking Americans that are.
Would it be uncomfortable for people today? Yeah, but like a movie about like the Native Americans and then the Pilgrims. They had to have fought. We're just covering it up. When they came over here.
Yeah, there's definitely a good horror movie,
but even just like
could be involved,
like the Northman version of it is what I'm saying.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, just
going
style,
mythological with it. That's spooky. That's interesting, like a kind of witch version, but just more about the battle between the two. That's interesting. That's interesting. Well, I will dwell on that and think about that for the rest of my night. That's for sure. But I think it's time for us to jump in. There's no predictions just yet, or there's no nominations just yet for the 95th Academy Awards, but we're going to jump in and talk about some of our predictions as well as some other predictions from great sources like Variety. The 95th Academy Awards ceremony presented by the Academy of Motion Pictures Arts and Sciences will honor films released in 2022 and is scheduled to take place at the Dolby Theatre in Los Angeles, California on March 12th 2023. So before we jump in to some of the categories that we'll discuss tonight, I want to talk about the return of Jimmy Kimmel as a host. Jimmy Kimmel is back as the host of the 95th Academy Awards, marking the late night star's third time fronting the ceremony, which he did 5 years ago. And the 5 years ago was actually the incident of the Best Picture screw-up, which involved La La Land and Moonlight being switched for Best Picture. So there's some definitely contentious history with Kimmel. Obviously, he's not the one who caused that, but in terms of hosting, he is now joining Jerry Lewis, Steve Martin, and Conrad Nagel and David Niven for hosting the Academy Awards 3 separate times. And the only people who have hosted more times is Whoopi Goldberg and Jack Lemmon 4 times, Johnny Carson 5, Billy Crystal 9, and Bob Hope has hosted the Academy Awards 11 times. So, Ben, where we should start is right here with Jimmy. How do you feel about Jimmy Kimmel coming back? How do you feel about a comedian coming again to take over the Oscars? What do you feel about Jimmy Kimmel hosting the 95th Academy Awards?
I think it's perfect. Watching, as we've gone through our own, journey and research of the Oscars and watching old clips from old shows, Bob Hope was definitely, I think, the best choice. And having that comedy, I mean, that's what I remember and back in my day during the Oscars, when I was a kid and I would watch, a lot of it, there's still comedians hosting it. There was always the opening monologue. I remember even our freshman year, and Ellen DeGeneres did it, and that was a really good monologue. I remember hers was like really funny, and what it did was it opened the world of Hollywood up, and it showed how human everyone could be, and also how it's kind of funny that we're sitting, watching all these celebrities just get even more awards and more accolades and more praise that probably they deserve. So I feel like that like kind of set the level for everybody. And what it also did was it gave you a good overview of all the like movies that were going to be honored. So maybe, when I was younger, there were some movies I wasn't seeing, that I'm now seeing nowadays, just wasn't interested at the time. And getting to be like, okay, like getting a sense like what those films were and what they were about, I think helped me again, like follow along in the evening. Know like, okay, well, my choice is, movie A, but hey, movie D seems to be really good. And it's like some indies, maybe I would go watch that. And then that became my obsession with movies. Is I was like, oh, I want to watch that one because everyone seemed to like that, or that one because it won that award. So I think having the host, having a comedian to bring it all back, it works really well. And I think Jimmy Kimmel does a good job. Is he maybe the best choice? I don't know. I mean, I would have to really think about like who's like the best choice for Oscar host, but he still does a really good job. I guess as long as he doesn't pull like some shenanigans he's pulled in like other shows that I know people have got on him on. I think he's a great choice, or he's a fine choice. Really, I shouldn't even say great. He's a fine choice. And I think it's going to work just as well as any other host right now.
Yeah, I was shocked when you said great because I was kind of surprised by your reaction to that, because it is a fine host, right? I think coming off of last year with the infamous slap and having 3 separate hosts, and they're all comedians, none of them are actresses. I guess Amy Schumer is an actress as well, but it was very joke heavy. I think we'll still have a lot of jokes with the comedian at the helm like Kimmel, but Kimmel's also like the least offensive late night host. I think he doesn't get on people's nerves like Jimmy Fallon. He's not the British side with James Corden, and he's not like the right-hated Stephen Colbert. So I think he's like the friendly middle ground to host. And he knows a lot of celebrities, and he's a big fan of a lot of celebrities. Like, we're going to get the classic Matt Damon joke because he always does those bits. And we love Matt Damon, and he's Oscar legacy too as well at this point. And the only thing that really is kind of disappointing for me is that I wish we could get back to the Billy Crystals. We could get back to the Jack Lemmons, the characters, the hosts that were great actors, but they also could be very entertaining. They could, tell the jokes that were written by their writers or the Oscar writers, and they could have a great little monologue like Jack Lemmon and Bob Hope did. But they also have great works of cinema behind them, great works of fiction that they've made in the industry, and I think that adds to something. It shows it's a vote of confidence when you have a host that's also someone who's very much a part of the industry. And yes, Jimmy Kimmel has friends. He interviews actors all the time, every day, basically. But he's not really a part of the industry. So therefore, he's always going to be removed by it. He's always going to be poking fun at it. He's never going to fully be in love with film and cinema in the same way that a Jack Lemmon would be, a Bob Hope. People that have lived and died to be in movies and got the chance and had enough talent and opportunity and luck to be there and to host and then be honored to host the Academy Awards, right? So I just think we need to get back to that. Who the right host is that has those qualifications is extremely hard because we don't have that many musicals anymore. And, you know, we always have a lot of musical elements to the Academy Awards. I don't think it has to be someone who has to sing and dance like they do for the Emmys or Golden Globes, but someone who has that kind of level of performance, like a Hugh Jackman, but then he's probably going to be maybe nominated this year. So you come across that aspect of it with like the really good actors and actresses may also be kind of like crossing over to being nominated as well that year.
Yeah, I think you're definitely right. And I don't know. Yeah, I don't know who the perfect person is. Yeah, to go back, that's similar to even like a Billy Crystal. I could see like maybe they want to bring Billy Crystal back for one more, because then he could get to 10, and maybe it would be like, oh, well, you're one away from Bob Hope, and but I don't know how much he really cares, about that. There was someone who I was just thinking of it that was like, they could be good, but maybe not the best. But also to your point about like what they're not really making musicals anymore. They're not even really making like comedies anymore, and I feel like that was the person you have to look for.
Yeah,
so,
that's right.
Who's like in like a big comedy, and there's not really big comedies anymore. So I don't know like who really stands out.
You're right. Yeah, it's like the Billy Crystal and Steve Martin Short, all these guys who are like some of the last great comedic actors. They're waning in a way that they probably don't have that many years left in terms of being in the public eye, being in films, being in TV shows like Only Murders in the Building. I'm sure that'll be another season or two, but Steve Martin and Martin Short are very old, I think in their 70s, to be out there acting in a show that is almost in their 80s, to be acting in a show that's like 10 or 12 episodes. So, but they could, come out, maybe they're 80 years old together and they could host the Academy Awards like that. I think they would still bring that energy. Those two together are really phenomenal. But you're exactly right. It was actors that not only were sometimes singers and performed in musicals, but they were very much always comedic actors, right? So in the last generation of comedic actors we really had was like a Paul Rudd, a Seth Rogen, and both of those guys I just don't feel like have any interest at being associated with the Academy. Like, I'm sure both of them would love like Oscars, and maybe like Seth Rogen will get one for producing one day or for writing, or maybe Paul Rudd will get one for being in a movie, but I just don't really see them.
I think LeBron gets an Oscar before Seth Rogen does.
Yeah, you think so?
Seriously, yeah.
Well, he's gonna get a lot of TV recognition like he has been in the past couple of years. He seems more focused on television than he does movies, but you know what I mean? Like,
he is in, Seth Rogen is in one of the Oscar contenders this year. So.
You're exactly right. Yeah, you're exactly right. But
just saying.
But you're exactly right with saying that it is mainly comedic actors, and those are really the two that jump to my mind. I mean, even someone like Robert Downey Jr., who is in his 50s, almost 60s, like he could be a phenomenal host for the Academy Awards, but he's just never going to do that,
No, and he wouldn't even do a monologue. Like, I don't even know like how long he'd even talk for.
Yeah, I just feel like he hates being in the public eye. So it's a shame. I think Jimmy Kimmel is a fine choice, like you said. I think he's going to get it done. He's going to make a joke about his screw up at the La La Land versus Moonlight Best Picture screw up is going to be not nearly as bad as the slap. Like, there's going to be a joke, obviously, comparing the two, or saying how there's going to be some mention about the slap. Like, we know that's coming, and it helps it coming from a comedian.
Is there?
Oh, dude, they have to acknowledge the slap from last year. Without a doubt, there has to be a joke about it.
I hate it so much.
There just has to be. I feel like it would be very weird if they didn't.
No, you're right.
So, I mean, that was so close to the end of the show too, and they didn't even acknowledge it in the show of last year.
Yeah, so. I feel like whenever it gets brought up, I'm like, damn. But I do now live in a world where I've been able to just push it out of my mind, like forget that it ever happened.
I know, and I continue to push it out of my mind, but we can push out of our mind by filling our mind with more predictions, more guesses at who will be nominated for the 95th Academy Awards. And we're taking the basis, the kind of framework of our predictions just to have a talking point here, which comes directly from Variety.com, written by Clayton Davis, who wrote about his predictions. So we're going to use that as a basis to kind of go off and jump off and discuss the categories and possibilities for certain nominations when it comes to actors. And we're going to mainly focus on the actress and actor point of view for Best Supporting, and then moving into actor and actress. And then we're going to do directing and Best Picture. We will be doing a reaction to the nominations when that comes out in probably January, but we wanted to jump on it really early in November to chat a little bit with you guys. And we're going to start with Best Supporting Actress. So right now, the 5 predictions that we have here are Angela Bassett for Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Charmaine Bingwa, help me if I mispronounce anything here, Ben, for Emancipation. We have Jessie Buckley from Women Talking, Carrie Condon from The Banshees of Inisherin, and Jamie Lee Curtis from Everything Everywhere All at Once. So, Ben, is there any name that's not here that you think should be? Is there a front runner that you see, or even just your favorite performance, Best Supporting Actress performance of the year here?
Yeah, this is a tough one when I look at these names and then just trying to look at like other sources for like what they think, could be the winner in this category. I really don't know. I think that Angela Bassett actually will be nominated here. I think that just because of the popularity of Black Panther, she's always been in the public eye. Everyone loves her. She's gorgeous. So I could definitely see like her getting a nomination here, but in terms of winning, probably not. So I don't know. And I think right now the front runner is Jessie Buckley for Women's Talking. That movie's getting a lot of love and praise, and it comes out at the end of December. So I'm excited to see the movie and see her performance. So maybe she is the front runner now, but who knows, how it's a political campaign. So whenever everyone else starts gaining for themselves.
Yeah, you never really know until there's like a final last push or the last kind of 60 days until the show. But I really love that, he mentions Jamie Lee Curtis as being a potential supported actress nominee, and she's phenomenal. I think she has never really been represented at the Academy. She has such a significant history throughout film and carried from her mother onto her, and she's just very important. And with the end of the Halloween franchise this year, with her being recognized in one of the best movies of the year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and she's just a phenomenal character in that movie, a character who we see, just like our main characters, we see variations of, and she's hilarious in every single one. And I loved her performance in that movie. I think you're right. Jessie Buckley Women Talking seems to be one of those really big buzzing movies that we still haven't seen yet. And Angela Bassett, she's so great in Black Panther Wakanda Forever. I mean, I think she really holds that movie together. And I think that movie is much worse as soon as she's gone from the film. And she kind of carries the weight of that movie, and as soon as she's gone, I think it definitely feels like something's missing from that movie. But definitely,
I think that was a mistake. I think that was a mistake in that movie. But she was great, and she gave us probably like some of the best delivery.
Yeah, very
in the
powerful
entire movie. So it's very memorable.
And Carrie Condon from The Banshees of Inisherin. I don't think you've seen that yet, Ben, but she is. Oh, you have seen it? Okay.
Oh no, I have.
She's so good.
She's great,
phenomenal, and I could also see it going to her. So this is a really hard category here. I mean, we haven't seen Emancipation yet from Apple. It's not out yet, but as soon as that's out, I will definitely jump on that as well.
Yeah, definitely. And it definitely also seems like, to kind of help Jessie Buckley's argument, is that Claire Foy, who's also Women Talking, is getting some attention in Best Supporting Actress as well. So if you have 2, maybe that helps, but we've also seen in the past where you can have like 3 nominated in the same category and they don't win.
Moving on to Best Supporting Actor, we have Ben Foster from Emancipation, Brendan Gleeson from The Banshees of Inisherin, Judd Hirsch from The Fabelmans, Kai-Hee Kwan, I think that's how you say it. I tried to look it up in multiple interviews. It was very hard to nail that. I still don't think I even got close to nailing it. And finally, we have Eddie Redmayne from The Good Nurse. So, Ben, what's jumping out to you? Anyone left off here?
No one jumping to mind that's left off. Just looking at like other places. Paul Dano, also from The Fabelmans. I've seen The Fabelmans. I know you haven't, but he's really great in it. Honestly, like Judd Hirsch has just a really great like 10-minute sequence in the movie. So it's like but it's really good. Brad Pitt, I know, is like, going to be talked about a bit, but for Babylon, but I have to see that movie and get a sense of like where he is, although he just won recently. Brendan Gleeson, though, for the Banshees of and I'm gonna fuck this up the entire time we talk about these movies, but the Banshees of Inisherin, he's phenomenal in it, and I would love it if he did take that home, but it does seem that Kwan, because of the popularity of Everything Everywhere All at Once, and being a former child actor in a very beloved movie in the Indiana Jones series, coming back at that level and how well he did in the movie, like playing so many different roles, he was really good.
I really love Kwan in the film. He's really phenomenal, and I don't think it'll be Oscar like caliber in terms of. I think that film really just gets hurt by its own, not just the concept, but it gets hurt by the level of humor and the way they're willing to go to such like lowbrow humor. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I don't think there was really a bad joke at all in the film. It's more that it has a lot of child humor, butt humor, like farting humor. Like it's got the humor that comes from the Daniels, the two guys that made it. And it goes a little beyond, I think, anything the Academy has ever even gotten close to. So I think that might hurt his chances of winning or even being nominated. But if he were to be nominated, I mean, that would be amazing. I think that's such a great story alone for him to be there and for him to have such a long gap in his career and come back. That's really amazing.
Well, right now he is the favorite to win. So on some websites.
Yeah.
I don't know. So it looks like I'm looking at Gold Derby, which is another good website to like help. They have a lot of odds with it, and they have Kwan first, then Gleeson, and then a guy that's not mentioned is Ben Whishaw, who's also in Women Talking. So obviously, Women Talking is going to get some Oscar nominations, especially in the acting categories. But then you also have the two guys from The Fabelmans, Dano and Hirsch, nominated there. So. That's on their predictions and website. So I don't know, but it definitely seems like it's going to be Kwan then Gleeson as like the 1 and 2 in this race.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we have Ben Foster here, who I think is one of the most underrated like supporting actors maybe ever. Definitely of the last like 10 or 15 years. He's a very underrated actor, and I think I've heard in Emancipation that he's going to be in with Will Smith. I think he's kind of the main villain, slave owner maybe. So he's going to be, and I think Best Supporting Actor is always a great chance for villains and, the evil side, the evil characters to be nominated and to win. So I think Ben Foster has a good chance here. But I think Brendan Gleeson is still the number one probably for me in terms of the film is perfect for it. It's such a well-written film. His character is like the center of the drama in that film. And he just has amazing scenes. Like any one of his scenes probably you could clip out, and that could be the clip they show at the Academy Awards. So I think that's a perfect movie to be nominated, and also he's just a really incredible performance. But really, I still haven't seen The Fabelmans, so I can't wait for that to be in a wider release. But really, I'm just shocked to see Eddie Redmayne here, because I think The Good Nurse is one of the most underrated films of the year. It's a movie that is very slow, it's very cold and calculated, and it's very simple in the way it's kind of told. But Eddie Redmayne is so disturbing in this movie. Like, he is truly creepy because he plays like an everyday villain, a guy that you could walk down the street with and just like have a chat with, and you'd be like, that's a nice guy, but secretly there's something like very disturbed about him, right? And I think that's just perfect casting with Eddie Redmayne. Plus he plays this character so perfectly in a way where it's like every line he says, even if it's like a sweet endearing line about him like hanging out with his daughter, there's like a level of manipulation and like dirtiness to it. It is a really incredible performance that I think is not being really talked about at all, because it's just one of those films that just gets dumped onto Netflix in a weekend and people watch it and then they forget about it.
Yeah, which is unfortunate. Yeah, and just thinking about this, I want to ask you this question because you definitely have an opinion on this topic, but thinking back to, what was it, March? Would you have thought that someone from the Batman would be nominated here? Do you think Paul Dano?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned Paul Dano, because what a great
amazing year for
him in the Batman. And I can't imagine his character is very similar in the Fabelmans. So like, what he wears the same mask and everything.
Yeah.
So what a great, I love a good year that like shows an actor's range and just how good he can be across different roles. And it seemed like Fabelmans is a much more toned down film, right? And something that has a lot more subtle performances in it compared to the Batman. But I mean, it's hard. It's always going to have that comic book kind of title attachment associated with it. I think that's always going to pull it down, even though I think you can watch the Batman and have no prior history of Batman or the comics and still think it's a phenomenal detective murder mystery film that's just all about, inner city corruption. Whether it deserves acting nominations, I mean, I really think it comes down to the Batman himself. I just think Patterson delivers such a powerful performance while being kind of completely hidden behind that mask. And he was in the suit more than I think anyone has ever been on screen in one film, and he just does such a good job of selling that character, and he plays it in such a different way that we've never seen it before, much like when we first got introduced to Heath Ledger's Joker. It was like such a new thing that we were like, whoa, this is what the Joker can be. And that's what I felt about his Batman. It's like this dark, sad boy Batman who had a lot of heart and sadness in him, and I think he portrayed that perfectly with having so little lines in the actual film. So yeah, sure.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you did forget Colin Farrell as the Penguin, who is gonna, he's in the Banshees of Inisherin. In it, I'm telling you, he's gonna be messed up the entire time. He's in the same movie with Brandon Gleeson, and he's probably gonna be nominated too, and probably a top contender, or potentially could win for best actor. I don't know, but. Again, he also has the Penguin to have that support. So you have like those two guys who I think will be nominated actually this year, but obviously not for the Batman. But it's interesting they were both in that movie, and maybe it does help. Everyone's like, oh yeah, they were in that movie. They were really good. They like put a lot of work over the last few years, so maybe they deserve this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there is a science behind the the big picture that everyone goes out and sees. It's a comic book movie. Colin Farrell's there. Paul Dano's in it. But then they both do their small indie picture that's probably less than 50 million, maybe around 50 million, and it's just a really powerful performance, and it's a drastically different character, and that's a perfect transition to Best Actor. I think we'll come right back to Best Actress after this, but to me, I think Best Actor is the hardest really category this year that we're kind of
really
slowly picturing together. I think personally, because I think Hugh Jackman has been eyeing for his leading man at Oscar for such a long time, and he's got buzz with The Sun. We have Bill Nye, I forget how to say his name, for Living, Brendan Fraser for The Whale, Colin Farrell for Banshees of Inisherin, and Austin Butler for Elvis. And I just think it's a very challenging year because I think Colin Farrell gives one of his maybe best performances ever in the Banshees of Inisherin, and everyone keeps talking about Brendan Fraser and how he's having this comeback and what a great story it would be if Brendan Fraser comes out of nowhere and wins the Oscar for this. And then everyone loves Austin Butler as Elvis. So, I mean, I feel like every one of these men are loved, like just as themselves. So that makes it really hard. And then I think people have just talked about all of their performances throughout the year. And I think we're going to get more from Hugh Jackman and Nye, I have no idea how to pronounce your name. I'm so sorry.
I think it's it might be Naiji, but
Naiji.
Actually, don't quote me on that. I don't know.
And he's a legendary actor too. So apologies.
No, he is. No, I know he is, and he's in one of my favorite movies. I think it's called Pirate Radio. But they changed the name of the movie after it was released. You ever see that movie? Had Philip Seymour Hoffman in it. It was about this pirate radio station that operated off the coast.
Wait, they changed the name of it?
It was Pirate Radio, but then they changed it to a different name. It was a dumb name.
I remember it being called Pirate Radio. I can distinctly remember the trailer
and they
for
changed
it and it being called
the
that.
name of it. Yeah,
what?
But
I don't remember them ever.
Anyways, he's in that movie, and I love that movie. And he plays Davy Jones in Pirates of the Caribbean, and he is fucking phenomenal in that. So,
wow, you're right. Yeah, so it's so funny. You go into the IMDb of Pirate Radio, the poster says Pirate Radio, and the movie is renamed
that's
The
what
Boat
it was,
That Rocked.
So it's Bill.
Well, what's such a worse name?
Naihi. Naifi. It could be Naifi. The GH in there.
Every British listener is just
Fuck
screaming
you.
at us right now. Especially after our last episode, they're already pissed at us.
I
with
mean,
My Fair Lady.
what did we say that wasn't true?
We gotta watch our
What did
backs.
I say that wasn't true? Anyways, best actor. So I'm surprised that you think it's so wide open, because I think there are really great performances from Austin Butler, Colin Farrell. I'm going to be seeing Hugh Jackman soon in The Sun. Very excited for that. But to me, all I've been hearing for the last few months, and everyone's hyped when they see it, is the trailer for it, is Brendan Fraser in The Whale. Like, he's doing the right press story. He's saying, it feels like the right things. Like, he's out there now early campaigning. Like, I've already seen quotes of him being like, oh, I won't go. I think it was the Golden Globes. He was like, my mom didn't raise a hypocrite. I'm not going to go to that. So I think, like, really take a stand,
Sure.
which is, I think important socially and for your image at this time for people campaigning for an Oscar. So I think he's going to get it. I think this race is more locked up than you think. And then, like, when I look at the odds on it, like, because you can actually bet on this stuff, he is favored. He's favored at minus 200. So basically, you have to pay $200 to win $100, which is not a great bet. You know?
Wow. Well, I think you're exactly right with the campaign that he's been on, talking about it, shitting on the Golden Globes for the harassment he had from one of the members, and all of that is very true. And he definitely is very prominent. But I think on the other side, we also have to talk about how the film is not really rated that well. It has a pretty mixed reaction from critics. Everyone praises his performance, which, yes, that can definitely grant him a nomination. But in terms of actually overall winning, I think he's got a bigger battle to fight. I don't really think Brendan Fraser is an actor that people think of as being best actor, quality. And while this is a big jump out for him and a big kind of comeback year for him, I just don't think people really look at him and respect him in the industry in the way that they do with Hugh Jackman, with Colin Farrell, and now with Austin Butler, who's kind of introduced himself as this leading man who just has embodied this character. And people love when someone comes in and they just embody someone. And everyone left that movie saying, like, that dude played a great Elvis, and they left not being disappointed by him. And that's a really hard thing to say about someone who is famous as Elvis. But I really think when it comes to Brendan Fraser is that recently I saw that the Independent Award nominations came out, and not only did The Whale not get nominated, but his performance wasn't even nominated at all. So I know it's this Independent Spirit Awards. It's not like a 1-to-1 for the Oscars, but a lot of the times there is overlap there, and usually you would at least see someone nominated there to be then nominated for the Academy Awards. So,
but how many of their last best actors, like, is maybe The Whale doesn't fit the criteria for the Independent Spirit Awards?
Maybe
for some reason.
Maybe they don't qualify A24 as independent anymore. But
I don't know. When I look at the reviews and, like, ratings, like, as we've talked about, Rotten Tomatoes is not the best number to look at. But what if, because there's always, the last few years there's been movies that, like, weren't loved by the audience but was loved by critics enough, and they had lower ratings, and maybe that's a contributing factor, maybe because it's not really out yet. It's only been seen by a handful of people, in like the festival circuit. I don't know.
It's really hard. It is.
It would be, I still think it's him just based on people's reactions to it, and I guess Farrell would probably be the number 2 at this point. Although I would love to see Austin Butler win. I thought he was phenomenal, but
he really was. I think there's a lot of baggage that comes with playing someone as big as Elvis, and all the makeup and all the costuming they had to do to make him become that character. I think people could always, like, look at and point to as an excuse. I think that happens from time to time.
Yeah.
But if I had to put money on it now, I think it's Colin Farrell. He's never won an Oscar. I think he is the leading star of Banshees of Inisherin. He plays a character that's, like, not at all like Colin Farrell. Colin Farrell has always come off to me as a really strong, confident guy who seems to be very friendly from everything I've heard and seen of interviews with him. And in this film, he's like this kind of immature, kind of considered lowbrow or dumb in the kind of Irish community that he's in. And he's just like a doof. He's just like this big doofus that, like, you love. And he's so compelling in the film. Like I at moments forgot it was even Colin Farrell. It was that good a performance that I like kind of disassociated myself from him as an actor for moments where I was like, this is just that character. So I really think that film is going to carry weight just in terms of how great it is overall and just how much he leads and carries that film.
Yeah, I think it's definitely possible. And my last question about this is, do you think, because if it just goes with the 5 that we have right now from the Variety article, that's pretty white acting, best actor field. Do you think people are going to be okay with that? I mean, unfortunately, there's not really a person of color that stands out to me that should be, and maybe that's just because Hollywood and the way they, obviously, we've talked about Will Smith and Emancipation, and we know he's not going to be nominated, but supposedly he's awesome in this movie.
Yeah, which is such a shame. I mean, he would have been probably nominated for sure if he didn't do what he did. So, like, he would have been in all of these lists. Like, we know for a fact he would have been, so that's a shame, but that's such a hard thing to hit on because I'm, like, racking through every film that went through my mind, right?
I mean, you have Idris Elba in 3,000 Years of Longing, Daniel Kaluuya.
Yep, which is too fantasy out there and didn't get the best reviews, so there's that too.
Yeah, it's tough. It's really tough.
I think, isn't there, he might not be a lead, but there might be a black supporting character in Babylon. I think I was getting a lot of press.
Diego Calva,
off the top of my head. Considered the
He's considered the lead, although there was some... there's some fiasco at the beginning of it because they originally started putting Brad Pitt as the lead, but everyone's like, no, like this guy Diego Calva is actually the lead. Like, what are you doing? So right now, on Gold Derby, he's the 7th person on their list, right behind Tom Cruise for Top Gun Maverick. Why not? Well, why not be nominated? Why not nominate him?
You think he deserves a nomination?
I mean, he is
for that
performance.
When
you're flying and you're pretending to be a pilot yourself in that situation. Not many people can do that.
Hey, I love that movie, and I love that his performance in it. I mean, I think it's one of his best movies probably ever, not only do honestly, and he plays a great character.
I think that movie's going to get
Cruise, that's for sure.
At least 5 nominations, and I think it's going to win at least 1.
Interesting. Well,
I think it's going to get, cinematography. It's going to get probably sound, visual effects.
Probably win sound.
It probably will win sound now that I think about it. I can see the score, maybe. Is there a song? Wasn't there
best song, Lady Gaga?
Yeah, the Lady Gaga song. Yeah. That's probably going to be nominated. And then maybe there's a surprise somewhere else in that 5th. I don't know. Maybe he does get actor.
It's a tight screenplay, man. There's like nothing missing in that
Best
movie.
Picture. That's the 5th one. I think it is going to be. I think it will be nominated for Best Picture.
Okay, you're spoiling it. We'll get there. Bro.
All right, fine. Sorry, there. I know I jumped the gun a little bit, but I think it. 5 nominations. I'm just saying right now, Top Gun Maverick. It's 5 noms.
I think that's a good guess. I think there's good votes in there. I think definitely best song, best sound, special effects, maybe. Yeah. But let's move on to Best Actress. We have Cate Blanchett for Tar, Viola Davis for The Woman King, Daniel Deadwyler for Till, Michelle Williams for The Fabelmans, and Michelle Yeoh for Everything Everywhere All at Once. I'll jump out and say Michelle Yeoh has to win this. She's the best. I think she's the best performance of the year. I love her so much. She's amazing in that movie. If she doesn't win, it's a crime. Obviously, she will be nominated. But, Ben, I want to first hear how Michelle Williams was in The Fabelmans.
She was really good. I don't know. I go a little back and forth on her character as a whole, and I think when you see the movie, I think you might get some of that yourself. She was really captivating. She had some really great facial and emotional moments that I think shine, but I think at other times it's a little like you're like it's a little too annoying of a character, but she's still going to be nominated, I think, but I don't think she's going to win. I don't think it's as strong as Yeoh and Blanchett.
What I found interesting is that she's listed as Best Actress. Like, do you think after watching that movie that is a possibility, or would she Best Supporting Actress, or do you think Best Actress is right?
No, she was definitely Best Actress.
Okay, interesting. Because I haven't seen the film, I've only seen the trailers, so I'm just going off of the trailers, and I know it's very much an ode to his mother, Spielberg's mother, and a nod to his family and his upbringing. But I didn't know she was that important in it.
Yeah, do you know? Well, because it's about his family. I'm not going to spoil it too much here.
No spoilers, boy.
But do you know anything about Spielberg's background? Because I knew a little bit going into the movie.
Yeah, to a degree. I know it's like, his mother and dad being opposing sides, one trying to be the artist, other trying to be the, the kind of business guy, and one pushing him one way, one pushing him the other, and the mom being a failed pianist. I mean, that's all I really know, really.
Okay. All right. Then we won't say any more because I'm not going to confirm or deny how that impacts the movie or what it's really about. Anyways, yeah. So I think she'll be nominated. One person I'm really excited to watch and see is Olivia Colman in Empire of Light. That movie.
Mm-hmm.
That movie could be interesting, get some nominations, but she seems to really shine in that. Margot Robbie isn't on this list of the women that we're looking at, so it's kind of up in the air. But I think Yo would be my vote and choice, but I think it's going to go to Cate Blanchett.
Mm-hmm.
I think you were right before about how Everything Ever All at Once is just gonna be nominated, but it's not gonna get any of the love because it's not for the right audience of the voting base. And I just think Blanchett, she's, to give her a third Oscar, it would be legendary moment for her. She has a really great performance in Tar. It's probably the only win that movie could get. I don't know. So I think she's still going to get it, but I do hope that Michelle Yeoh could surprise all of us, or maybe she does start to become the front runner at some point.
I really hope she does. I think she'll definitely be nominated. I think this list is probably pretty close to what it'll actually be in terms of nominations, and I really want Michelle Yeoh to win because I just really loved her performance, and it's also just a nod to her career. She's getting older, and she's definitely not gonna be able to do the stunts that she used to be able to do. But she is such a integral part of cinema, not just American cinema, but a huge part of Chinese cinema, and how much she's gone on to be in so many great American films as well, and to be loved in America. If she were to win, I would rather a Viola Davis to win, and I haven't seen Tar or The Woman King, but Viola Davis just looks insane in that movie. Not only did she transform her body, but she really looks like she's commanding, and all the reviews that I've seen and read about her is that she really owns that role and then really embodied it very well. So I had nothing against Cate Blanchett. She's already won. It's such a boring pick. The film, it didn't look bad at all. It looked very riveting in terms of it being a very character-driven film, but it just looks like Oscar bait. I got to be honest. It looks like a very Oscar baity film with an Oscar baity nomination with an Oscar baity win.
Is very aware of that. I think at times actually, and
I'm not try to subvert that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that they go overtly out of their way to hey, we're making an Oscar movie. I think it's just the way that they critique and talk about characters and personalities, and the way that Cate Blanchett plays that character it's a little of mocking a certain types of people. So I really like that movie. Sure. I thought that movie was really good, and she, seeing her in a more psychological part was really nice. Actually, it's a long movie. There's some things maybe I could have cut out. Maybe some things I would have ramped up and focused on more. But I think I think she has the best chance right now, except for, and then Yo. So if it's not Yo, I think it's Blanchett.
Yeah, I don't think you're too far off at all. I think one of the other things against Tar is that it didn't really do well. I know critically it didn't phenomenal. I mean, she's an amazing actress with an amazing director behind her, but I don't think people really had any interest to go out and see that film. I think it did really poor at the box office. Not that is a direct correlation of what wins or not, especially as we've seen with Best Picture winners recently. It's not
it doesn't matter.
Dead on confirmation, right? But there is a kind of missing bit here for Best Actress, and that is Ana de Armas for Blonde. And I know before people start screaming, Blonde has been criticized and ridiculed so much online, and people would just despise the film. I feel like a lot of people haven't even seen the 3-hour movie, but they're still hating on it. So there's that, which I thought she had a pretty phenomenal performance. Yes, her accent came in here and there, but I think she did a great job of embodying her. And then I also want to throw out Florence Pugh for Don't Worry, Darling. I mean, I think that movie was such a letdown, but I think she gives a very incredible performance and really kind of carries the film. But I think my personal biggest miss here for a nomination, and obviously this aren't the real nominations, so we'll see when they come out, but I love Mia Goth, and I think Mia Goth has had an incredible year, and I know it's not the traditional route to give a horror lead, a final girl, or she's not even, in Pearl, she's the opposite of a final girl. I'm not even sure what to call her, but instead of being the last girl alive, she just makes herself the last girl alive by killing everyone else. But I think Mia Goth like kills that performance. She's so haunting and terrifying, and I think that last scene, the last shot of the movie will kind of carry with me and haunt me for the rest of my life. So I mean, that alone I think is really worthy of being nominated. So anything else, any other actresses or actors that we've kind of missed that you think should be kind of given a nod here for this year?
No, I think we've covered it pretty well. It's interesting because through talking about it, like I thought things were locked up, but maybe they're not, and some things I thought weren't locked up probably could be locked up. So we'll see. It's going to be an interesting race.
The biggest one was really.
I think sometimes we know. I mean, was there any surprises last year with the acting categories? No, right? It was pretty. I mean, I guess Best Actress was like a little up in the air. Like I did think, like Kristen Stewart still should have won, but Jessica Chastain got hers, and that's why I think just the legacy part of this is a huge factor now. So
I think even like Daniel Kaluuya from Nope is a possibility. Not that that's going to be like a high on the list, but I really loved his performance in that film. I thought it was very like subdued and quiet and subtle, but
it was way too subdued, I think, for an Oscar audience.
Yeah. Which is totally fair. I think you're not too far off there. I know you didn't like Crimes of the Future, but that is still on my top 10 list of the year, maybe even top 5. I love that movie so much. But Viggo Mortensen,
that'll be one of the biggest mysteries.
Amazing.
That'll be one of the biggest mysteries of my life, of you liking that. And not just you, but other friends of mine. Like, I don't understand. I associate with these people who think that movie was that good.
Maybe you were just too disgusted the first time. You need to go back and watch it. But
no, I'm not. I'm never going to rewatch that movie. It has nothing to do with, I mean, body gore is a little weird, but just like that movie made 0 sense. And anyone who thinks that they're like, oh, this is a masterpiece, I think needs to get their head examined. Or they're just a little too high. So
I don't know if I'd go that far to say it's a masterpiece. I think it can be a little clunky at times, and I think it could have been tightened a little bit to become maybe a masterpiece, but I don't think it's far off, dude. I really think it's an incredible film, and I think Viggo Mortensen is one of his best performances. And I think he's such a weird character. Obviously, it's very sci-fi, it's very out there, and it's not something we're used to seeing visually, but he gives such a beautiful performance in a film that is very much a love story as much as it is a horror film. So I absolutely love that. I loved him in it, so don't think he'll ever get nominated. But how do you feel about maybe like Johnny Knoxville and Jackass Forever getting a Best Actor nomination?
That's just wishful thinking.
We can try. We can wish for things here, We'll see when it actually comes time. But let's move on to Best Director, where we have Todd Field for Tar, Anton Fuqua for Emancipation, Martin McDonagh for The Banshees of Inisherin, Sarah Polley for Women Talking, and Steven Spielberg for The Fabelmans. Do you think Steven Spielberg takes it home for the last time, Ben?
Yeah, this seems locked up for right now. It seems like everyone's on the Steven Spielberg train. I mean, he's heavily favored right now. Like, he's like the heavy favorite. I think that I feel like at the end of The Fabelmans kind of delivers home a certain point about like where he is and like who he stands next to in terms of like filmmakers of all time and great directors. It's kind of like highlighted at the end of the movie, and I think that giving him a third Best Director Oscar like really solidifies that. It's a time to celebrate him and his career and what he represents for the Jewish community, I think, as well. I mean, that's also what he did with Schindler's List, and not saying this movie is like Schindler's List, but it definitely highlights an important conversation that is going on in today's world. So I think he locks it up. I don't think that there's like these other like directors that I'm looking at, like they're not I think doing the ode to film that he does in The Fabelmans, and I think that they're like really great and fine movies, but best director worthy. It feels like that they do exactly what you need to out of a director, but it doesn't like take that extra step. And Spielberg does that all the time because he's Spielberg. But in this movie, I think it really shows like how good of a creative and filmmaking mind he truly is. And that's not because he does anything like flashy. It's just the way that he tells the story and sets it up.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I think he's probably still in the lead for possibility of winning. He'll definitely be nominated. In terms of any other nominations that aren't here, I mean, I love Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I think the Daniels who directed that movie are visionary directors. They come from music videos, and they've made some of the most original films I've ever seen, and that's after 100+ years of cinema history, and they're still innovating in such a beautiful, creative way on a very low budget. So I can't wait to see where they go in the future and having them expand with hopefully huge deals after Everything Everywhere All at Once. But you also have maybe the mention of the Damien Chazelle for Babylon, which we don't really know how that movie's going to turn out just yet, but I really love every film he's ever made. We have Sam Mendes for Empire of Light, could be a possibility. Baz Luhrmann for Elvis. I mean, what a visionary director who's making some of the most like spell-binding, bounding, whatever the word for it is. He makes visuals and transitions in films that I'm like, I don't even want to know how long that one transition probably took. Like the CGI and the manipulation of the image, like he does things in movies that I'm like baffled by. And maybe that's his like hand-in-hand editor, but I really think he is a huge component of making a really visual picture and making a film every like 5 years that is like has everything packed into it, right? Like everything is just jam-packed into everything he makes, and whether that's good for you or bad for you, I think it's his style and it's unique, and it definitely stands out among all of these other directors that we've named. I mean, there is maybe a James Cameron. I doubt that'll happen. And maybe a Rian Johnson too.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah, I think James Cameron has a possible shot, but it all depends on how Avatar The Way of Water is received. But another name that I think just to appreciate like what he had to do is Ryan Coogler for Black Panther. Like that's where some of the Black Panther love could shine a little bit. But that it's probably a very long shot, but just the fact that he had to, you know, supposedly he submitted an entire script and he was already starting to plan the second one. Then Chadwick dies, and then he has to rewrite it, and he creates a beautiful movie and captures grief in a very real and authentic way. It truly rung home in a very sad way, unfortunately, but it captures an emotion that's very tough. I think that a lot of movies do try to do. I think like when you think of other Marvel movies, like of Endgame, when Iron Man dies, I don't think it has the same weight that it feels like in this movie, and that's using just a direct comparison. But even with other movies, when main characters die, sometimes for me it feels so like over dramatic and so like over the top because of how maybe the characters are acting or how the aftermath is kind of tied up. But with this one, let's go off on that tangent. I think that has a worthy enough performance or direction in it, and he's been a really great director in all the movies he's touched. So, but that's a very long shot. That would require, I think, a lot of like press for Black Panther to go on. But I do think like when you mentioned the top, like the Daniels, I think they are going to get that nomination. I think that movie's going to be. I would not be surprised if like Everything Ever All at Once gets between 8 and like 10 nominations. I think it's going to get a ton. And it's going to be all over the place.
I would love that.
Not just
I would love that.
Think about it. It's going to get, spoiler, Best Picture will get there. If it gets Best Director, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, Writing, that's 5 right there. And then you still editing. I think how's it now in editing? Like a category. No. I'm talking about Everything Everywhere All at Once. Like how does
Black Panther?
I'm not even talking about like deserving, like to win. Yeah.
Yeah. It definitely should deserve it just from the number of cuts. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, they like cuts. They definitely like cuts.
No, you're absolutely right. I feel like the biggest competition would be like Top Gun in terms of like the trouble of editing that movie together with the flight sequences and all of that. But editing is always very confusing to me. I just don't really understand how they pick the winner for that movie. You know what I mean? They do, but I'm trying to think of a recent winner, which I can't think of off the top of my head. But I just remember with Whiplash winning, I'm like, yes, that makes a lot of sense. Like, that movie is so dynamic and in your face, and like the whole movie's about editing, basically, you know? But other films where it's just like, why would that win? And like, you know, it's like, it's either I'm not understanding the knowledge of editing enough to like fully grasp why it would win, but editing is always one of those ones that's up in the air. But in terms of Black Panther and Coogler, I think that has probably a better chance with writing in terms of being nominated. I think he will be probably nominated for that. Another one for Best Director is Martin McDonagh, which I think he, in terms of the 5 that we named, that's the only one I've seen, and he really creates a very beautiful vision of this Irish island that these characters are on, and it feels like it has a lot of backstory that's from the script and the context of the script, but it also has beautiful movement and it has beautiful direction in terms of the camera movement, the way the film is shot, the locations, the direction to the characters, the way they have all these incredible performances, and a lot of the movement. There's a lot of like characters, you know, moving around locations. I don't want to go too much into details, but there's a lot of like walking and movement of the characters. And where does that come from? Not just the script. That's mainly on the day of, where the director is kind of commanding the actors to do certain things. So I think he has a good chance of winning here as well, but it seems like we both agree that it feels like a good way to kind of go out on Spielberg. But there is the common trend of Best Director not being the same winner as the Best Picture. So how do you feel about that? If moving forward into Best Picture category, and let's just say The Fabelmans wins, do you think he's going to win Best Director as well? He'll take home both?
Yeah, I think this year it lines up. You know, looking back on the last few, I mean, last year Coda won Best Picture, and I'm forgetting her name right now for Power
Jane
of the Dog.
Campion,
Campion. You know, Jane Campion. She won for Best Director. Nomadland. Chloe Zhao, you know, won Director and won Best Picture. Parasite, you know, Bong Joon-ho, he won both. Green Book, that was split. Shape of Water was the same. The Year Moonlight won. Damien Chazelle won.
It does flip-flop, it seems, yeah.
It's flip-flop, but outside of last year, the previous 2 were, you know, went hand in hand. Man, that's so tough in looking at like the list, because it is kind of split, but it does happen a lot more than you actually think. Mm-hmm. But I think this year is still the case where I think Spielberg gets both, unless the Daniels, unless people really go for the Daniels, and I just don't know who else like deserves it, like has like a good enough reason to me that deserves it more than Spielberg right now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I totally understand. It feels right. It feels like the right time for him too. So, but let's move on to our final category, and the category for Best Picture. And the 10 nominations that we have listed are Women Talking, The Woman King, Top Gun Maverick, Tar, Living, The Fabelmans, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Emancipation, Elvis, and The Banshees of Inisherin. So, Ben, I know we talked a lot about The Fabelmans. Are you confirming that you think that's the winner here?
I am planting my flag. You can still get it at good odds if you want to bet it. I actually might do this because it's just to me, like where it sits right now, there's really no controversy around it. It seems like a really good pick. It honors filmmaking. It's very timely with the messaging of the film, and it's just a very emotional ride. And I think that when you have all that coming together, and this isn't a spoiler because you do know this, but you know, it has references other Best Picture winners, and it actually references 2 Best Picture winners in the movie.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it references 2. I know you know one of them because it's in the trailer, and it's a huge part of it. And I think that when you have that, you know, that extra oomph because it's about filmmaking really helps it. The Oscars love to talk about movies. They love movies about movies. So I think The Fabelmans has this locked up.
You're not wrong.
I think if it was to be a surprise, I think that would have to be Everything Everywhere All at Once, actually, because that's the most dynamic. Top Gun Maverick, that would be bonkers That would be absolutely bonkers. It's a really good movie.
Is that crazy though? I feel like Top Gun has a better chance than Everything Everywhere All at Once, just because of how many people have seen it. I feel like even people in the industry, like I think there's still a good amount of people that haven't seen Everything Everywhere All at Once. I mean, it did well and it lasted in the box office for a long time, especially for A24 and indie release, but I just don't know. It's such a hard... This is definitely one of the hardest ones. I think even how much people are loving Banshees of Inisherin. I've had two people that like aren't that big of movie people that are like, that is the best movie of the year, hands down. But
it's a very good movie.
They're not the ones voting.
Honestly, I look at this list, and this list reminds me exactly of the 2010 Oscars when it was Avatar versus The Hurt Locker, and The Hurt Locker won. Like, this just looks exactly like... I think Top Gun Maverick is that Avatar... It's a similar thing to Avatar, and man, and the Fablemans isn't like as indie as the Hurt Locker was, but the Hurt, still like kind of lower budget, smaller movies that kind of takes over the big blockbuster. I don't think Top Gun's gonna get it though.
How do you feel about people pushing for it being such a? It's a film that like advocates for seeing it in the theater and for promoting theater going and pushing that. Do you think that helps its chance of possibly?
Yeah, and if the producers of the Oscars were smart, hint, hire me to do this, I would have Tom Cruise go out there and talk about the wonders of going to the theaters, and then announce that they're going to show Top Gun Maverick again for a whole other year in IMAX, or do like some kind of special release. I think people would be amazing. Like, yeah, and I think that's the way to get people to go back to them. I mean, movies used to run for like over a year, especially these big movies. Those movies, and I know it's just because there wasn't many theaters for people to go to see, but if you told everyone like, hey, you can see Top Gun Maverick like in IMAX for another like 6 months, I think people would still go. I would go again.
I'd definitely go again.
IMAX.
Absolutely, I would definitely go see it again. So I love that idea. That'd be sweet if they did that. In terms of any other films that like we haven't mentioned, I mean, I personally love The Batman. I love Nope. I really like The Northman. Where do you feel on The Northman and The Batman? Because I know you're not going to say the Nope is going to be in there.
No, I like Nope, but it's not going to get there. I thought at the time The Batman would get some love. I still think it's going to get some. I would say maybe 2 nominations. I think it's going to get soundtrack score and maybe something else, maybe like a visual effects. Man, there should be a lighting category because, god damn, that lighting. So good. That's a category I don't understand why it's not. It's never been at the Oscars or ever discussed. But anyways, so I would pick The Batman, probably over The Northman. I'm trying to think of like other movies. I mean, we we were talking about before we started All Quiet on the Western Front, like that remake, and I was watching part of it last night, and I really liked it, but not many people are going to go see it. So I don't know. And it's a remake, but also another movie that I wish I saw, but I was just like too lazy to go. But RRR, that Bollywood movie, did so well, and people loved it a lot. And I actually thought it would get more love and attention somehow, but it doesn't seem to be tracking well. I mean, as an international feature, like, does it still count? It's so like wide released around here.
Yeah, I think it still counts as an international feature. It just depends, I think, whether India will submit it as their particular film that year. And I know All Quiet on the Western Front, I don't know if it's confirmed yet, but it seems like that'll be Germany's entry, and they might have a chance of winning there as well. And there's also Decision to Leave by Park Chan-wook, which is another really kind of highly sought after film. And there's also Triangle of Sadness, which I've been dying to go see, but I haven't gotten a chance to go see that. And I've heard both of those films are really, really phenomenal, and they're both on the top of my list of the films that I want to see this year. But I did see mention of RRR being nominated for even almost Best Original Song as well, because there's a lot of great musical numbers in that film. So there's a chance that it gets nomination, maybe even multiple nominations. So we'll have to wait and see for that. I'm trying to think of any other film. I mean, Clerks 3, I got a chance. If there was a Best Monologue award, like, it would win. Yeah, that's a fact. Like,
which monologue?
It's got to be like the closer to the end, like one of the final monologues, either like their fight confrontation monologue or his just monologue with the actress Ahsoka Tano. I can't think of her Rosario Dawson.
Rosario
Yes,
Dawson.
thank you. With their like conversations together. I mean, what a beautiful scenes they have. I mean, if there was any justice in the world, that movie would have recognition.
Yeah. I mean, for us, if we would be the biggest campaigners for that. I mean, that's a very
there's not a chance. I mean, that film is so reliant on Kevin Smith and Kevin Smith fandom that there's
and he doesn't give enough of a shit
there's no chance.
It,
and the overall group of people are just not going to push it and be behind something like that. I think we may see like the good nurse kind of come from behind maybe and maybe be nominated, but we'll see.
We'll see. I can't think of any other movie. I'm so locked into the Fabelmans, and I've seen a lot of the movies on the list and ones that we talked about. There's still some I need to go see, and just the Fabelmans has stuck out right now as like the best movie, and I don't see another movie coming out that is on my radar that I want to watch and go see that is getting buzz, that is getting that. And could be one of those years where there's a clear front runner, it gets in, there's really no like qualms about it, and I think that would be great. I think we need that for an Oscar ceremony where there's no controversy of anything, like Coda last year versus Power of the Dog. Like that, it wasn't controversial, but there was like enough of like a narrative and storyline between the two. Nomadland didn't really have any like competition, but that year is so weird. Like that's just a like to me it goes Parasite to Coda when I think about it sometimes. Yeah, just because. Yeah, it was so. Because it encompassed so many movies at a time where it felt like there were no movies coming out. I don't know, just going back in Green Book, I mean, that was a whole thing there. Shape of Water, that had a good competition with the Three Billboards. The Moonlight La La Land is like the all-time like classic.
Battle, yeah.
Like, just head-to-head movies of like one clearly represented one thing, and not like they're like differing opinions, but like old Hollywood and cinema and an ode to that versus like a very real, visceral told story that needed to be told and shown and accepted in society. So
and that really brings up the question of like what is a Best Picture winner, and there's definitely a trend here of films kind of like nodding to cinema and film history, with The Fabelmans, Empire of Light also being about filmmaking. I even saw that there's a scene in Living. I just watched the trailer today for that.
Yeah.
There's a full scene of them in the movie theater. So there's a lot of love of film going and movie watching and just adoring film. And that's, like you said, has always been right there with the Academy, and they love a good film that honors movies, and especially Babylon, which seems to be the anti kind of film. It seems like the anti La La Land that kind of wants to shit on the messiness of Hollywood and maybe the aggressive nature, the sexuality, the boozed upness of Hollywood, and maybe the dark side of Hollywood. I don't really know what that movie's going to be yet. It sounds like it's extremely long and maybe divisive, and I'm all for that. I loved every film he's ever made, Damien Chazelle. Actually, I haven't seen his first film, so I shouldn't say that. But every film I've seen but his first feature, I absolutely loved. Like, maybe up there with calling some of them perfect movies. But I think he has a great chance just of being around and being nominated so many times already at such a young age. But this is definitely a great year. I think this has been a great year for cinema, and I think we're moving forward with hopefully more films next year, more people going out into the theater. I hope this isn't the end of people's theater watching. But I wanted to ask you at the very end here, what film do you think will have the most nominations come January or February when they announce the nominations? Which film that we've spoken about tonight do you think will have the most nominations?
I think that we're gonna see. I think we're gonna see potentially two movies in the double digits, and I think it's gonna be The Fabelmans and Everything Everywhere All at Once. I think can have the most nominations. Now, is that a good indicator for a movie to win Best Picture? Just like looking at the list, from honestly, most recently, Best Picture winners don't even win that many Oscars. So last year, Coda went 3 for 3. It was literally nominated for only 3 things, and it won all 3. Before that, Nomadland had 6 nominations, only won 3. Parasite had 6, only won 4. So Shape of Water had 13, but then before that, you have to go all the way back to The Artist, which had 10. So is that, and it's probably not even like a great indicator too, because it's Spielberg and that number gets totally skewed when he's having like a really, a tracking movie for this kind of stuff. So I definitely think that we're going to see Everything Everywhere All at Once get a ton. And that, I think, might get the most, but I think The Fabelmans could also get just as much, if not maybe one more, than that movie. What about you?
I think those are great guesses. I think I would have to go with The Banshees of Inisherin, though, if I had to put money down on it. In terms of the most nominations, will it walk away with them? I'm not quite sure, but I think that film will get the most nominations because I think it's going to get directing, it's going to get picture, it's going to get writing, it's going to get maybe 2 or 3 acting nominations, and I think those alone is just going to rack it up to such high degree, and I think that film deserves best cinematography as well, so I think that's going to be up there with The Fabelmans, and I just...
Man, cinematography, that's interesting. I haven't even
that's just a really hard category. I didn't want to go too deep because I think we could talk about all of these topics for like 3 hours, but I wanted to mainly hit on the acting categories, directing, and best picture, but yeah, if you have anything, I think Top Gun has to win best cinematography.
So I scroll down on Gold Derby to their top movies for cinematography. I'll go from 5 to 1 because I want to see your reaction to this. Number 5, they have All Quiet on the Western Front.
Wow.
Which I would not be upset with based on what I watched and saw. Number 4, they have Avatar.
Wow. Okay.
3 is Top Gun. 2 is Babylon.
Wow.
And number 1, The Fabelmans.
What?
They have right now as
that's
the
crazy.
top odds to
win. I feel
win.
like it has to.
Yeah, I love The Fabelmans. I love the way it looked. I think it will be nominated for cinematography, but I feel like Top Gun. But then again, like maybe they're just like, it's special effects, but like maybe they don't like even care that much that they were flying on it. I mean,
I don't know. It's hard. I think Empire of Light could
that
be
was
there
number
too.
6.
I mean, that film looks like visually gorgeous. Yeah, I think that looks just incredibly beautiful. But
Batman is at number 10.
It's hard. I mean, I watch the trailer after the podcast here for Living. I think that looked like visually very stunning as well. So just going off of things that look beautiful. I mean, that's definitely a high bar to go off of. But I think Rian Johnson as well. I mean, he creates such visually interesting films and always loves messing with the camera and camera angles all the way back until Brick. He loved messing with the cinematography. So I think that Glass Onion could have a lot of really cool cinematography and really interesting cinematography. So we'll see, man. We will see. But
wow, the Batman's not even in their top 5. It's number 10 for best score. That's awful.
That is so awful.
That movie. That's going to be the real
cinematography
shame.
Too.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, honestly, but maybe don't believe us because we're a bunch of Batman nerds. But one more stat thing I just wanted to quickly just point out: if The Fabelmans won, and this is my favorite indicator of a movie rating, it has an 8.3 on IMDb, which is the second highest of recent memory to Parasite, which had an 8.6. But then you have to go all the way back to 2006 for The Departed, which had an 8.5. So just saying. Fabelmans has a really high rating and would be up there in terms of really great movies, but we also have to remember that Green Book has an 8.2. So maybe.
I will not stand for the Green Book hate here. I refuse to end this podcast that way, you son of a bitch.
I'm not hating on it because I think when we get there, and not to sound too controversial, I think there are some good parts of that movie. Just the way it's told and messaged is not the best.
I'm going to leave that alone and end this podcast by saying The Batman will be the least nominated film, but should be one of the most nominated films of the year. And that movie is a technical masterpiece, let alone just an amazing story and film with great characters and action and everything you want from a great motion picture. So cheers to everybody. Look forward to us soon. In a couple of weeks, we'll be back with The Sound of Music, and we'll be back to our regularly scheduled programming. And of course, when the real Oscar nominations come out, Ben and I will be here, just like we always are, ready to talk about the real nominations and not just our predictions. So, Ben, anything else you want to leave our beautiful, lovely audience with?
Ooh. Pick the Fablemans, bet on it. I think it's going to happen. And, John, have you been getting your Do Re Mi's ready for The Sound of Music?
Me. Yeah, I'm ready. I'm so ready.
All right, awesome. Cool.
Should we do...
Thanks for listening to Worthy.
Should we do the main outro? Because that was such a funny end. Thanks for listening. My name is John.
And I'm Ben. And this is Worthy.
Thanks for listening to Worthy, the breakdown of every Best Picture winner from past to present. Listen to us wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on Instagram at Worthy Podcast, on Twitter at Worthy Pod, and on Facebook at Worthy Podcast. Any inquiries can be submitted to worthysubmissions@gmail.com. That's worthysubmissions@gmail.com.